Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Loud and clear, sir.
Yes, okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining us this afternoon from here in Incheon, Republic of Korea. I would like to thank you all very much for another wonderful time joining us today. And we greatly appreciate your time again for joining the second session we're having today. It is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the session 2 on risk-informed governance for disaster risk reduction, which will be the second session of the workshop or this online workshop series. Today's section will focus on providing the fundamental knowledge on disaster risk reduction and also try to highlight the interlinkages with the Sustainable Development Goals. The session will also share some insight on the significant role of risk-informed governance and innovative technologies for disaster risk reduction, whilst delving into some specific digital technology solutions for disaster risk reduction. The training or today's session will also want to introduce to you or implement the risk-informed governance toolkit that have been developed in partnership with between UNDESA, UNPOG, and UNDRR. And this toolkit contains all the materials that are very comprehensive, they're adaptive, and can be used for our own capacity development activities, even at the country level. So whilst I want to proceed, my name is Dana Samuel. I'm an associate capacity development expert with UNPOG, and I'm going to moderate this session. And I'll also be delivering, or I'll be delivering the overview presentation today. And my colleague, Anna Toland, who is a programs management expert or officer with UNPOG, will also be presenting on the specific technologies and frontier technologies and digital government tools that are very key for promoting disaster risk reduction and building resilience at the local level. We also have an invited guest or a speaker in the person of Mr. Joel Maher, who is a senior disaster management specialist with the Pacific Disaster Center, and he's also the co-chair of the IMWGS GIS subgroup. He will be co-presenting with Anna, my colleague. And we have a special speaker who will be joining us during the course of presentation. He's in the person of Mr. Victor Guzman, who is an expert on digital transformation at the Institute for European Studies and Reforms in Moldova. When he joins later, I will further give clarification about him. He was also the former ambassador of Moldova to Estonia, and we all know the key role Estonia is playing in promoting digital government or in e-governance. So without much ado, so today's section is broken down, just as I mentioned, we have this overview presentation. We also have another presentation on risks or the technologies. Then after that, we have the Q&A section. Then we go to have the break. After the break, then we have this other presentation or this innovative presentation from Moldova, from the European Union sector. So afterwards, then we have the exercise or group section, which we hope will be more interactive as the previous one, and we also want to welcome you to be more engaging today. Another announcement I would just want to quickly make is that just as we did the previous one, we're using a Zoom meeting, and we want to, since it's a certificate program, and one of the requirements is to have you attend in almost all the sections and actively participate. To be able to confirm your participation, kindly put in your full name in the chat box and also your organization or your country, and that should be fine. And make sure you give us your right name or your full name, being consistent with what we had before. So once again, welcome to today's session, and I would like to just progress straight to my presentation on risk-informed governance for disaster risk reduction. I'm sharing my screen from here. Okay.
Anna, you will share the questions on the Mentimeter?
Yes, yeah.
After your presentation?
Yes. Okay, so before we proceed with this presentation, just as I mentioned, the presentation will be on risk-informed governance for disaster risk reduction and building resilience. So to set the scene, I want to just try to brainstorm and have some recaps, or try to see how we all understand the key concept we're coming to discuss. So I want you all to join us using the Mentimeter platform to be able to answer a few questions to kickstart the session. The link, or just use the link in the chat box, and also try to use the code or the password, and my colleague will be sharing the screen on the results, so that we just want to know what are your understanding on some of the key concepts on what we're going to do right away. So I think Wuyong can share your screen, or Anna. Okay, I think Anna is doing that. So the questions will be shared through Mentimeter. Anna is doing that. So the first question, as we have, is that we're coming to talk about risk-informed governance. So issues about governance is important. So what comes to your mind when you think or hear about governance? Any word in particular? We just want to, what comes to your mind when it comes to issues about governance, or when we mention about governance? So just use this link and join, and kindly submit your responses. What comes to your mind when we talk about governance, or we mention issues about governance? We'll be looking forward to your responses. I know some people are still joining, so just go to mentimeter.com and use the code 43474294 and kindly submit your responses. Is it trust that comes to your mind? Is it big government? What exactly comes to your mind when we mention about governance? I know most people are still joining now. Kindly go to menti.com, sorry. Okay, don't put your responses in the chat box. Just submit it through Mentimeter. I want to make it more interactive. Yeah, I know some people are submitting their responses through the chat box. Submit it through the Mentimeter. Okay, whilst I will just add 1 more minute, whilst I know most people are still trying to sign in. Yeah, we want to get an idea as to what, or our understanding about governance when we mention about governance, whilst we try to proceed. I see people's participants still submitting their responses through the chat box. I don't know if whether okay, so maybe let's go to the second question. We'll come back to this. Submit it through, yeah. I think people are submitting, but it's not reflecting. Okay, I think that might be the challenge here. Okay, let's try to go to the second. Okay, maybe we'll come back to this again. Can we go to the second question? Maybe with a different link. And I kindly check if whether the code corresponds with the question we're using. Maybe let's go to the second question. Yes, I see people saying e-governance is a must in modern technology in the chat box. Okay, so I think we'll just close this one here. Let's move to the second question. Okay, maybe Wuyong, can you just stop sharing? I think there is a technical challenge with this here. Wuyong, can you hear me? Okay. Yes, I think there was a challenge with the system. I get responses that people are submitting, but it's not reflecting on the Menti.com. So I will just proceed with my presentation, then we will come back to this in the course of the presentation. So to just let you know that the presentation on risk-informed governance is very key and is very important, especially in building disasters, or in ensuring disaster risk reduction and building resilience. So today's presentation is going to take this format. We're going to look at the current trends, and we're going to look about the key concepts on risk-informed governance. We're going to look at some innovations through risk-informed governance for ensuring resilience, as well as introducing briefly the curriculum on governance for the SDGs, which this toolkit is part, and we also look at some policy recommendations. So the first part is that issues about the sustainable development or sustainable development goals has been ringing for several decades now. And we all know that sustainable development just refers to development that should meet our present needs, whilst making sure that we don't compromise those of the future generation. So the current global development agenda we have, one of it is the 2030 agenda, which has 17 goals and about 169 targets. And the world or countries have committed, or governments across the world have committed to working on it to make sure that by 2030 we achieve this and make sure that we achieve all these goals. But in recent times, the reports on the SDGs, especially the current one, the 2020 SDG report, or the Sustainable Development Report of 2021, provides us some revealing outcomes that calls for reflection or something we have to look at more. So in the recent one, we find that in the 2022 SDG report, you see that there's a lot of reds and orange and also a few greens. Greens means or globally, or the sub-region or the various regions are making progress in these ones. For instance, Southeast Asia, East and South Asia shows this. You find that we have only a few greens, and especially it happens only on SDG 12 that it's making progress. But you find that across the globe, most regions, and even in terms of income levels, countries are retrogressing or stagnating. And one thing we also have to know that as of yesterday, over 548 million cases had been confirmed globally about the COVID-19 pandemic. And we all know about the COVID-19 pandemic, which is one of the gravest disasters or crises that has happened in recent times of human history. And the COVID-19 pandemic has also led to over 6 million people or deaths across the globe. And we all still trying to recover from it. But whilst we try to recover from it, we have to also reflect on some of the impacts it really had on our lives vis-a-vis the Sustainable Development Goals. So we all know that one thing is that whilst the world was still struggling to make progress on the SDG 1 on promoting poverty, or on alleviating or reducing poverty, COVID-19 has further led several millions into extreme poverty, and even those who had not been in poverty had also been in poverty, are also in poverty now. Hunger issues have increased globally, and world hunger is something that had occurred or is continuing to be more affected from the pandemic. Health has been something at the center because people's health got deteriorated, people had health issues, people died from the pandemic. We also know about education. Schools closed down, as we all know. People's accommodation, people's inequalities has further increased, and violence against women and other vulnerable groups and other persons in vulnerable situations were extremely affected, especially during the COVID-19 time. I know we're still trying to get out of it. So we find this diagram, which provides a great web of interlinkages as to how the COVID-19 pandemic, you know, it's a form of disaster. It's one of the pandemics that has really impacted almost all the SDGs, moving from poverty, as I mentioned, to health, to education, to work, and to even climate issues, also in terms of conflicts and other things. All these have been affected. The other one we will have to look at is that issues about government are very important. And at this stage, we want to know what has been government's efforts in implementing the SDGs in recent times. So this diagram from the 2022 SDG report says that as of last year, this graph here shows how countries had made statements to endorse the Sustainable Development Goals. So you find them categorized in terms of regions in East and Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, Latin America, Middle East and North Africa, and also, so you find, where you find the green shows the percentage or the number of official statements that have been made. So it means that not every country has really, or governments are really making enough efforts to be able to implement the SDGs. And also, how are countries integrating the SDGs into their sectoral plans? And also looking at how governments have been able to incorporate the SDGs into their budgeting system. So this also shows that whilst there have been some progress, government's efforts are still not enough, and hence the need for governments to further accelerate their way of doing things in promoting governance issues and the SDGs. The next thing we want to know is that whilst all these challenges are happening, it provides us a way to better, an innovative way to better find how we can achieve or work towards the SDGs. So one is that there have been a proposal or a proposed 6 SDGs transformation targets. So to make sure that people are not left behind, we have 6 transformational pillars. One is about education, one is on health and well-being, one is on clean energy, one is on sustainable use of land, cities, and digital technologies. So trying to focus on this has shown, or it's been recommended, that if we focus on this, it can help better achieve all the 17 SDGs. And this, focusing on this, can also help us. Not that other SDGs are not important, but these major transformations, when we work towards them, we are able to better accelerate progress on the SDGs or the 2030 agenda, as well as it can be a measure to better recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. So what exactly is risk-informed governance for us, or to our understanding? Going forward, governance issues or governance generally refers to the exercise of economic, political, or administrative authority, which helps governments to be able to manage their affairs. But going more deeper, risk-informed governance should be governance that tries to be more collaborative, and this calls for long-term and in-depth engagement, both for national and local plans, as well as how governments are able to prepare for real world impacts. So what is more important here is that institutions must be built, capacities must be strengthened, as well as making sure that local institutions are built to be resilient, to be able to coordinate well, as well as making sure that governments and communities are all involved and working together going forward. So in line with this, UNDESA, through the Committee of Experts on Public Administration, proposed 11 principles of effective governance, which are mostly Christian focusing on making sure that public institutions or governance systems are effective, they are accountable and inclusive. And these, under all these, there are other sub-themes which makes up the 11 principles. And when we are able to better incorporate these principles into the way our systems work, into the way governance systems are built, then we are able to make sure that our governance is not just being innovative and effective, they will also be more risk-informed. So another idea is that governance could mean actions, the processes and traditions or institutions, which brings or collectively make sure that decisions are implemented. So the role of governance vis-a-vis effective governance has even become more important, especially in this time of COVID-19. So that's why we were going to have the Mentimeter to know what comes to mind when we talk about governance to you, and especially what has been the role, or do you think governance really matter when we talk about crisis or issues about COVID-19? It's not just about the 2030 agenda that calls on governance or governments to work towards being risk-informed and innovative. The Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction also calls on governments to move towards more risk-informed governance arrangement, making sure that they include issues about hazards and risks into their systemic their plans, and making sure that the concept of systemic risk is well incorporated. It's also make sure that at all levels of governments, multi-stakeholders work together. So it provides key priority areas which are very important in working towards risk-informed governance. But one thing we should note is that priority number 2 specifically mentions that there is the need to strengthen disaster risk governance to manage risks and crisis. So this further puts us into perspective. So going forward, risk-informed governance as a key concept we want to relate to disaster risk reduction is something that we should make sure our governments and everybody involved in the system should make sure that risk decisions are risk-based, and we should make sure that we further understand the concept of risks as well as the threats they pose to society. And we should find that development should be seen as a vehicle to reducing risks rather than exacerbating them. And building resilient communities should be something that we should all embrace, because all the global frameworks all tries to highlight the need for promoting disaster risk reduction, be it or climate issue or climate action. And trying to invest in the digital government and risk-informed issues are very paramount in the way we are able to build local resilience. So moving towards a risk-informed governance is better explained by this diagram, that we try to move from the left, where we currently in the red, towards the green part, which is more regenerative rather than being from the destructive aspect. So we shouldn't just be proactive or we shouldn't just be reactive, but we should make sure that we integrate issues about risk into our system, and we make sure that we are able to predict and adapt well to disasters. So going forward, I just want to move quickly on this because public governance or risk-informed governance tries to make sure that it highlights the need for effective leadership. Leadership is something at the core of ensuring risk-informed governance, where there should be good coordination between the national and local. This calls for the need to have more effective engagement and collaboration, being it through the whole of government approach or being it a multi-sectoral approach. There is the need to empower all governance sectors and agencies to be able to work towards being risk-informed. So stakeholder engagement is something we've all heard many times about, and it's very important that to be able to work towards a risk-informed society, to build local resilience, we have to work together. All stakeholders have to come together, private sector, government, communities, persons in vulnerable situations, and everybody has to be on or have to have their hands on deck. Crisis preparedness and arrangements should be something that is well planned ahead of time. We have to make the laws, establish the institutional settings, and make sure that these are well implemented and adapted. Effective communications are very important, and we found that during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, communication and especially ICTs have been a great tool or a means to better manage the disasters, because the timely release of information is very important in the way we are able to anticipate and predict and even communicate the risks and disasters to people. So issues about to be able to become more risk informed, issues about effective communication strategy is something that should be very much upheld. Partnerships and collaboration, be it national, within or without, regional or even international, is very important. Especially we found that during the COVID-19 pandemic, governments had to engage together to make sure that because pandemics or crises do not care about boundaries or borders. They are border blind, let me put it that way. So we find that to be able to better work or become more risk informed, working towards or planning well towards disasters and crises, we need to engage and collaborate well with each other. And that is something that should be very important. So being it in the way that we are able to collaborate in resources. Issues about leveraging science, technology, and innovation, including frontier technologies, which my colleague Anna will be delving much into, is very important. And we really found that to be more risk informed, to be able to prepare even in working towards early warning systems and everything would have depended and will continue to depend on how we leverage innovative technologies, including ICTs. And this is something that I will not be able to overemphasize. Issues about data and issues about planning and working on this should be something that issues about big data is something, because everything should be based on evidence and decisions should be made based on the evidence we have. And I will not be able to let you better understand how this works than you appreciating it yourself, because I see that issues about data, what information we have, how much we are able to manage data, how much we are able to bring everybody on board, has been something that we have worked or the society has come to appreciate. Risk-informed governance appreciates that we better understand the interlinkages between the global goals. And one of it has been the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, as well as the 2030 agenda. So you find an interconnection between them. So they shouldn't be implemented in isolation, but we should have this kind of collaboration going forward together. And the other one is that we should also understand that disaster risk reduction has been mainstreamed within the 2030 agenda or the SDGs, and we find them in this with specific targets mentioning and highlighting issues about disaster risk reduction and resilience. So that is why in the beginning I mentioned that we were trying to find out how governments have been able to incorporate issues about the Sustainable Development Goals into their national development plans. And being able to incorporate them into their plans is something that shows how much governments are being risk informed and being able to prepare towards risks and disaster. So mainstreaming disaster risks and resilience into national development plans have several ways we could do it. It could be in the regulatory frameworks and plans we have, the institutional mechanisms in place, the policies and plans we have, even in the budgeting system. That's why issues about budgets should also incorporate the idea, because finance is at the core of being able to, or mobilizing the right resources is very important. Even in the way we build capacities, it's very important that we incorporate all this. And going forward, we find that risk-informed governance and even digital technologies are something we have to know, because it has been a great enabler in contributing to almost all the SDGs. So whilst the COVID-19 has affected almost all the disasters and almost all the SDGs, the risk-informed governance through the leveraging of digital technologies has also been a key enabler, and we've come to appreciate how it contributes to that. So we also saw how this diagram shows how leveraging technologies, whether data or digital or any, is very important for rapid diagnosis, whether in the health or the delivery of services or risk governance or communication system, or even in making early warning systems. So there are some of the things that helps in becoming more risk informed. So these are just examples. I will not want to dwell on them. The next one is that I've also mentioned about data, and data is considered the lifeblood of decision making and one of the key materials for ensuring accountability and even ensuring efficiency. So I want to quickly share an innovative or some innovations in how we are able to ensure disaster risk reduction through risk-informed governance. So I want to quickly play this and just to highlight this. Sorry, let me come. I think. Okay, I'll go quickly. I just wanted to share this video on how leveraging technologies are very key to building resilient societies, but I think it's failed to do. I tested it before. So one other way, as I mentioned, that disasters and crises are something that happen sometimes when we do not expect it. But whilst it may happen, we have to also find ways of planning towards them. So planning ahead of time with the right capacities are something that is very key to the way we are able to better manage and recover from these disasters. So one way of ensuring risk-informed governance is this case I'm sharing from Samoa in the Pacific. Here we find how integrating issues about disasters and climate change across sectors and stakeholders helped or has been able to contribute to this. So the challenge had been that Samoa is one or has communities that are very much exposed to cyclones and storms, including tsunamis. And this is something that had or continue to affect their environment and society. So what the government did was that government approved the the Samoa Disaster Emergency Act in 2017, and this plan was able to bring in people across sectors. So we're talking about multi-stakeholder engagement and bringing all of them together, including government agencies, including the private sector, had been very important for good coordination, whether at the national and local level, and including all local communities in place. So in the end, based on this strategy, Samoa was or has been able to strategically address and reduce its disasters, both at the national and community level. So we see here how engagement has been very important towards preparing or in anticipation of risks or in addressing disaster situation. So this is one way we highlight how risk-informed governance is very key to us. Another one here is from the United Arab Emirates, where governments, when have been faced with this challenge of sand with extreme weather conditions, governments came together with engagement with citizens by developing an innovative practice with an extreme weather app. And this app was made or had been made freely accessible, which was launched in 2016. So by the UAE government, all citizens are engaged to understand that before this extreme weather event occurs, they get alerts. Citizens are able to get alerts through their mobile phones or even through the web browser from the government system. And this also has technology incorporated in there where there's real-time data which shows how this disaster or is able to forecast and pre-inform citizens about this. So one key point is that with citizens' engagement and with the adoption of technology, they are able, or this government is able to detect and predict sandstorms even ahead of time, and citizens are pre-warned. So this is how governance collaboration is something very important. So the other part I want to mention is that whilst we try to talk about all this and also try to see how we can better deliver services to member states, as I mentioned, UNDESA through UNPOG and United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction developed a toolkit on risk-informed governance. But as one way to show this was that this toolkit is part of another bigger package of a curriculum on governance for the SDGs, which was developed by DPIDG, which is the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of UNDESA. So what happens is that we have all... Hello, I think kindly mute. So what happened is that we have several of these toolkits, and the risk-informed governance toolkit is one of them. So to be able to better make you understand, I want to quickly share a summary of what UNDESA through UNPOG is trying to do for member states. And we invite you all to be able to access this material on our ONPAN webpage, where you find all these toolkits there. So I would just want to share again this video with you. Quickly. Let me share the volume. I hope you can hear me. So let me just quickly repeat again. Okay. Okay, so just as I mentioned, all these toolkits are all geared towards building or strengthening capacities of member states. At the same time, they all promote issues about governance and making sure that governance systems are effective, they are inclusive, and they are transparent to be able to contribute to achieving the 2030 agenda. And as I mentioned, this is on the UNPAN website, and you are all invited to visit the website and have access to them. They are free of charge, and we can also adopt them and use it in your country context. But if in case you want to make any modification, you could just inform us in making sure we could collaborate with you. So the next step is just highlighting some policy implications going forward. So issues about risk-informed governance in either at the national or local level is very important, and this should be integrated into our national development plans and programs to ensure that we are able to prepare ahead of risks and disasters, including the 2030 agenda. And I also mentioned again that disaster or digital government technologies and ICTs are well coordinated with the global agendas, including the SDGs and the 2030 agenda and Sendai framework. And this makes it very more important. And especially we've all witnessed how very critical these tools are during the COVID-19 pandemic. Government policies and programs are something that should be more adaptive or more imbibing to include plans on adopting new technologies. Stakeholder engagements and multi-stakeholder partnerships are something that cannot be underestimated. And we have to also make sure that communication systems and everything are more risk-informed. Emerging technologies, as mentioned earlier, are able to help us better protect our environment. But we should also be informed that while these technologies provide, or these systems are able to provide us with the best way to be able to work towards resilient communities or societies, we should be able to make sure that there are enough laws and policies and regulations to be able to regulate the system so that people don't abuse them. And in the end, if we are able to make all this, whether in the form of laws, policies, and programs and governance system, or including even how we build capacities and include how we even acquire these technologies, we should also make sure that they are not just accessible, they are also affordable so that we are able to make sure that we leave no one behind. On this note, I would like to end my presentation here and invite in questions briefly. If you have any question you want to ask before we move to our next presentation. I would like to thank you very much for your attention and patience, and have a nice discussion. Thank you. Okay, so if there is any question, I'll quickly check from here if there are any questions. Okay, whilst we wait for questions to come in, I will let Anna share the results of the Mentimeter. I think there was a challenge. Yes. So the idea, the thing that happened was that we wanted to just know your mind about when governance issues are mentioned, what comes to mind. So we see people mention about bureaucracy, they mention about policies, they mention about leadership management. So with this word cloud, we saw the top had been leadership, and we're also having the accountability, good governance. Okay, yes, I think you really did submit a number of them, and yeah, that's very good. And so can we have the second question whilst we wait for maybe we'll have the second. So the second question was this. Okay, do you think governance and the role of government matters in planning, preparing, or responding to disasters or crises like COVID-19? I think all responses said yes. Very good. So the next question, yeah, I think people are still submitting again. Yeah. Yes, so the next question is, to what extent does the role of government or governance matter in ensuring disasters or the DRR and building resilience? So a greater number said extremely. So the role of government matters extremely. And some people or others said fairly. And a few said it doesn't matter. So I think we get an idea on how we all understand these concepts. Yes. Okay. So was there a last question? I think this was the last one. Yeah. Yes. So I want to thank you very much for your kind engagement on this. It's just that we couldn't have it on time to be shown, but I really appreciate how you were able to submit your responses. So we all get an idea as to what governance means to us and the role of government in disasters or managing disaster risk reduction, and also about how we think it matters. And a majority still mention that extremely matters. So yes, so the presentations will be shared on our website, and I also share it on the chat box before we leave. Another person asked a question that what could be the role of youth in disaster risk reduction and management? I think we all know that youth are vibrant. The youth are also regarded as a vulnerable population. So we see them as persons in vulnerable situations, because when disasters happen, children and the youth, including women, are people or segments of society highly affected. But the youth are also imbibed with certain qualities and potential that could be leveraged. The youth also make up a majority of our population. So, and the youth are also people we can see that they have more of the future ahead of them. So to talk about how the youth are able to work, the future belongs to them and tomorrow. So to better plan and predict the future, we have to make sure that we design programs. First, we have to make sure we let them understand what these risks and disasters are, how it impacts on society, including their lives, and also make sure that we put in policies and programs that gives them the platform to be able to better work or be engaged in the disaster risk and reduction mechanism. So that's why you see, even including UNPOG and other UN organizations have tried to organize fora, including programs during our symposium, where we have sections dedicated to the youth. And this provides a platform for them to learn more about issues about the SDGs, including issues about disaster risk and risk-informed governance. And we think that the youth are very important, and not just important, extremely important to this topic. Yeah, thank you very much. Is there any other question from the floor? I don't know if I missed out. Okay, somebody is saying, please share experiences in managing disinformation, especially that fake account abound. Yeah, I think if I get your Lady Lynn, I think we mentioned about communication, and during disasters, just giving out information and communications is not enough. They should be the right information, they should be timely, and they should be effective. I think I'll just mention quickly this one. So when it happens that this information, even though they are delivered and could be timely, if they are not the real or they are kind of fake news, it could lead to several challenges. Because if there's an early warning system where people are asked to move from maybe to a low-lying land to a higher mountain, but somebody comes in and shares or even blocks the platform on which they are going to hear the information and tell them that, oh, nothing is going to happen. With this fake news or disinformation, people are not able to plan and even get out of the way of disaster before they happen. So issues about fake news and accounts are very detrimental, especially to our development, as well as the way we are able to plan towards disaster. So I think that is something we should always want to work towards. I get one last one, and just I think we might be going beyond time, but okay, what could be the role of, okay, I've talked about the youth. Okay, what is the UN system on monitoring of disaster governance capacity building in a country? I don't get this clear. Okay, I think after this, maybe if I get it to understand it, I could type it. Yes, so with the video, a video will be shared, the recording, everything will be shared for your information. Yes, is there a last question we want to take and move to our next presentation? Okay, so on this note, I think we all get to understand it means we are able to understand the concepts that were explained, and we can continue to engage going forward. So I now want to use this opportunity to invite our next speaker in the person of Mr. Joel Mahia, who is the Senior Disaster Management Specialist at the Pacific Disaster Center and also a co-chair of the IMWG and GIS subgroup. If you are ready, you could just share your screen, or you allow me to do that if I have your presentation in the chat.
Thank you, Mr. Dana. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you very well from here. Yes.
Fantastic. Let me share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make it full screen, and I assume you can see my screen. Thank you, Mr. Dana, and to Anna and the team at UNDESA. On behalf of our Pacific Disaster Center leadership, I want to thank all of you for this unique opportunity. I'm going to take about 25 minutes and walk through the history of PDC and what we do, again, to advance risk-informed governance and in our partnership with UNDESA, and of course, thanking our colleagues at UNITAR and of course the CFILE network, and of course they're in Korea. Thank you all. We were just at the UNDRR event in Bali, where I do need to say we did win the Sasakawa Award, kind of the lifetime Oscar for DRR. We're very thankful for that unique honor to the team at UNDRR, and of course we're always working to make cities resilient. So again, on behalf of Dr. Aaron Huey, Dr. Joseph Green, and our leadership at PDC, thank you for this unique opportunity. Again, Samuel, you really spoke to so many things that we do in terms of governance and standards, in terms of data. ICTs, we've been innovating in terms of ICTs, geospatial, Earth observation, now AI, for over 25 years. PDC was founded in the early 90s. And as many of you mentioned in the chat, we'll be sharing our PDF version of these slides. We look forward to further collaboration. And again, we are the Pacific Disaster Center, but again, you can follow us at PDC_global for Twitter and on Facebook. We are global, even though again, our headquarters is in the Hawaiian Islands on the island of Maui as part of the United States, and facing, of course, the Asia Pacific region, which again, our partners at UNDESA have been such a great convening partner for us to, again, build a safer world. So please, I'd like to show you some of our innovations. I'm going to take about 25 minutes to walk through this. I'm often based in Geneva. I'm here in Hawaii today, but I have worked closely with WHO and various UN agencies, even UNITAR and UNISAT for satellite mapping. So we see a lot of familiar faces from Nepal, where we have ongoing work, the Philippines, throughout the Asia Pacific region, of course, given that we have staff members on site at the ASEAN headquarters. So that's a scene setter on our work with DRR and advancing SDGs. I wanted to showcase that, really we're about 50 people globally with our staff members, both in Miami and in Thailand, in Brazil, in Geneva, and of course in Hawaii. But it takes a village to stand on the shoulders. And we saw that again in Bali at the big global platform event. As you see on the top there, we even have a CFAL to our colleagues at Jeju. Thank you. We also have a CFAL Center of Excellence in Honolulu now, Chaminade University. So we'll be building that partnership to do what Samuel said. You can build, you can innovate, but if you don't do capacity building and training and curriculum, that's where we'll be learning from the UNDESA team. But that's just the part of it. We'll speak a little bit to our work with the IFRC, again, the largest humanitarian organization in the world, 192 national societies. We work with a lot of early action, risk-informed early action partnership, the Anticipation Hub, open data standards, working with HOT, OSM, and HDX. And again, I really do want to speak to not only, SIDS and other small island developing states and other areas where there might be vulnerable youth or the elderly. We have data to drive those decision makers. So Samuel, I really concur when you said data really is the lifeblood of not only the governance and the planning, but again, for the SDGs, and to have data-driven decision making. Of course, there you see that we joined the World Health Organization Global Outbreak Alert Network. So those are some of our partners. Of course, we work closely. I was on a call with the Amazon disaster response folks today. A lot of our solutions are in the cloud, resilient, working on AI for disease and Blue Dot, and of course, Salesforce and Tableau. How do we visualize this data? And our longstanding partnerships and MOUs with OCHA and the World Food Program. So let me go forward one slide here. 1 second. I think this really shows, and I hope this kind of conceptualizes how applied humanitarian center of excellence, again, PDC, and we're governed again by the University of Hawaii with funding from the US government, USAID, and elsewhere. We take a lot of this data on the left, remotely sensed data, social media, crowdsourced data. I think of Peta Bencana, the colleagues in Indonesia that are doing crowdsourcing flooding. That data goes into this digital map that is used by ASEAN, by BNPB. And then as you look here, we get the right data at the right time over to the policymakers on the governance side, disaster managers, people that might be working in a big operations center. I'm here in Honolulu, where again, in Hawaii, we have a lot of different types of disasters and challenges, from drought to volcanoes, cyclones, earthquakes, and again, over to executives. We work a lot with, of course, private industry and NGOs to make, again, a safer world. And we know it takes a village to do that. This is the type of data, and I want everyone who's on the call, and I see that I was so amazed we have 120 colleagues joining. You'll see my email at the end, you can reach out. Of course, you can always reach us at info@pdc.org. We have a platform called Disaster Aware. You can all go to your phone right now, and I know many of you have them with you, whether phone or Android. Go to the store, type in PDC Disaster Alert. It's a little blue dot, it's the app. We have 2.5 million people using this. We'd like to have another 120 people using this. This can, forget your day jobs. This can help you and your family be safe. This is something that we've scaled globally. I have the app on my phone, and you can see from disaster alerts. And again, thank you for recording this. I know our team is going to be listening to this. But again, you can see whether it's, you can see there a volcano or a wildfire. You can tell probably the accent as an American. I'm from California, where we have fires, floods, earthquakes. We use this type of data all the time. We want you to use it as well. But we also, as I said, we do disasters. Disasters are our middle name, as Dr. Huey reminds us, and she sends her regards. But we also, I always say, disasters are like band-aids. We respond. We also do preparedness, meaning vitamins. We want to build a healthier world. I'm thinking of our dear colleague, Dr. Jamila Mahmood, former Undersecretary General of the IFRC, now leading the Sunway Center for Planetary Health. Along with her and again, Ibu Ali Kamal, we were in Bali and had a panel on women leading DRR, again with Kara Siahan with the Anticipation Hub. And this idea that we want to have preparedness, we want to have a healthy world to begin with, we want to build resilient communities. And I think the Making Cities Resilient effort is a big part of this. We look forward to further collaboration. This is what we do, where we take baseline data, climate data, vulnerability data, and of course we put them through a disaster management analysis. What are the institutions? That speaks so much to what our colleagues are doing at UNDESA on governance. We read through all of that. We meet with stakeholders. What's the enabling environment? How could we change the legal underpinnings and the governance? So it's a big part of that. And of course, that's how we kind of scale it from there. So from risk and vulnerability over to what we call this an NDPBA, a National Disaster Preparedness Baseline Assessment. And again, we want multi-agency cooperation. We want to have risk-informed decision-making. Samuel, thank you for emphasizing that. And Anna, you were so great to invite us here, because that is something, this is such a great fit for what we do, and of course we learn from our partners. And obviously capacity building, and to our UNITAR colleagues, so much of that is built on, we need to scale. I know colleagues from UNICEF were doing trainings just last week that I saw on Twitter. We really look forward to working with Dr. Einar Bjorgo and his team, as we've done for almost 15 years. And of course, here's a little bit showing the schematic of when we do a subnational disaster assessment. We don't do it to countries, we do it in partnership from ongoing right now with Nepal, the Eastern Caribbean, scaling efforts throughout Africa, Asia, the Caribbean. This idea that we also not only will publish a PDF, but this highly analytical data will go into our disaster work platform. I'll speak a little bit to that. You can see it goes everything from utilities, critical infrastructure, power plants, sewers, emergency services, where I was in Cabo Verde 2 years ago before the lockdown. We spoke with fire leadership there on what would be the best way to scale fire preparedness, emergency services, police, and EMS, and of course the economics from the governance there and infrastructure. So this is where partnerships with the United Nations are absolutely key. I did want to, for the colleagues that mentioned this prior, we're very keen also to work, of course, with colleagues at the Cruise Initiative in Geneva. I think I was there at WMO just a few months ago, and of course the group on Earth observation. We know that satellites and AI and GIS can help when we're working with colleagues here. Of course, in this picture of the Caribbean, working with islands and the developing states, which not lost on us, we're based in Hawaii, which of course has 8 major islands. We have many of these same challenges. And I'm looking here at some of our partners, again, from UNDESA to UNDRR, to the GFDR and our colleagues at the World Bank. We work closely with Celeste and the team at the Hawaii chapter of the local 2030 Islands Network. Cruise, of course, which did such a great multi-hazard early warning event. The risk-informed early action partnership, anticipation of, we have a global MOU with the IFRC, and thank you to Jamila and the team that made that happen. And then UNICEF, the satellite revolution in satellite mapping. As we pivot our methodologies to look at the entire archipelagos from ASEAN to the Caribbean, you can see that multi-hazard risk is unique, and I'll showcase a bit the Bahamas in small island developing states. And of course, here as we look, we of course were very busy with the Dorian response. We had a team on the ground for over 2 months. We have worked closely with the National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, colleagues there in Nassau. We had a team there just 2 weeks ago doing capacity building. And these, what you're looking at here is some of the advanced analytics. When a cyclone, in this case, is landing 2 days or a day before, we can do our advanced analytics to look at what the impact may be, and thus help UNOCHA, World Food Program, and other partners with the response. And a lot of that is based on data that we already had. As we say, you need to eat your vegetables to be healthy, so that when you do have a challenge and need a Band-Aid, and of course, a big part of that is going to be part of how do we recover from multiple disasters, and how do we build resiliency over time. So I wanted to give you kind of that visual of we're a center of excellence for not only modeling these phenomena, but also data visualization. I think you can too. Chani and our communications team. This is an example here in the Bahamas, how when we do exercises and we work with partners here, again in Abaco, our primary school, civilian, military, and UN aspect of how do we build back better? What are the structures needed in place to build that resilience? And as we revisit a place like the Bahamas in 5 years, we will have that roadmap based on governance and data to drive decision making. So here's another example of the findings. We may find a finding that says, we read through the laws, some of the governance you could adjust it here, and here's the way that you could do that in terms of developing this capacity, and of course, always in line aligning with the SDGs. So this is an example of a real place, Bahamas, a partnership. We build long-standing partnerships. This is also about learning from NEMA and our Gale and our dear friends there, and of course around the world. And of course, the disaster management analysis, the DMA, is fascinating because it really does look at capabilities, resources, capacity development. This is really diving in. This is a lot of literature. So from digital data mapping into deep dives, looking at the structure of governance in a particular country, whether it is Cabo Verde, where I was, or Indonesia, and ongoing efforts in Nepal, the Philippines, Indonesia, and elsewhere. We also lay out this 5-year plan. I think that's something I'll be sharing a link to some of our publications. Trinidad and Tobago, you can see our ongoing work there. Our colleagues were just down there briefing stakeholders. And this is the way that it works as we look into a year where we kick off initial analysis, stakeholder engagement, presenting findings, and iterating, always built on partnerships. So that's where colleagues at the UN with such a key convening power of UNS and UNDRR. I want to thank you all for what you do. So you can see here when people say, well, we have a request for information, or we need to train further on disaster aware. And also in this case, if they may need advanced analytics or advanced hazard exposure model, these are all strengths of the Pacific Disaster Center. Information sharing and disaster early warning, I know that was a theme of this discussion. In terms of multi-hazard early warning, I really want to walk through this and show you what we do. And I love this photo. Here is Lawrence Anthony, POC LA, who is leading engagement at the AHA Center there in Jakarta. So how do you get a big region like ASEAN to use advanced analytics? Well, he is pointing his finger at disaster platform. In this case, the version that is used there is DMRS. And this disaster management platform that's used by all ASEAN nations has over 6,000 data layers in hazard data, critical infrastructure, damage assessment, specific country level data. And that's something, again, we'd love to get more of our colleagues around the call using this platform. It does have, again, everything from utilities, power plants, demographics, economics. I'm an old GIS person, having worked both in Europe, and I was in Afghanistan a few years ago, North America, the Asia Pacific region. So I myself look forward to working with all of you to help you, again, make a safer world that's data driven. Samuel was so spot on to speak about the power of public health preparedness. Of course, we've learned a lot, all of us, during the COVID response. PDC was on daily and weekly calls with our WHO partners. My previous background was working at WHO during the Ebola response in Nepal and H1N1. So we really learn from our partners, again, here showing our advanced analytics for Philippines and shining the flashlight here, of course, Honduras. And of course, we were working globally and with partners that were in Afghanistan in terms of preparedness. And so our models that we use, we have an all hazards impact model that is really the best in the world, working with Amazon, the Facebook Data for Good, the humanitarian data exchange at OCHA, to ensure we have the best population data to do exactly what Monsieur Danban spoke to, that we can run an analytics on a flood area or some impact to say how many vulnerable colleagues may be there. There could be youth, there could be X number of elderly. We can get that data, and that often goes into some of the humanitarian response plans of our OCHA and other partners. So again, our data is used by the partners around the world, from IFRC to OCHA, World Food Program. So we get excited. We love what we do. And of course, we also say any platform. You may get a PDF on the right. You can see our joint analysis of disaster exposure. This is an official document we do in collaboration with OCHA, World Food Program, in the regional office for Asia Pacific. Here it is, a cyclone landing, in this case, Kamuris landing, and we can then send this analytical product to stakeholders in Manila and in the Philippines to make better decisions ahead of time. It can be a mobile app on your phone. It can also be on an iPad or laptop, or often on a big screen at what we call an operations center, an EOC. There's LA, Lawrence Anthony showing off our great tools, and of course, situation reports. I was updating some SIP reps today. We've been very involved in the South Asia flooding throughout. Our hearts go out to colleagues in Bangladesh, in India, and elsewhere who have been affected by the flooding. And so disaster is, of course, our middle name. We're very good at giving people alerting, real-time, multi-hazard, early warning and alerting. And that's something that we're very proud of. We also do all hazards. You can see all the different levels of hazards, from sudden onset, tsunamis, earthquakes, slow moving to drought, to different flooding events. We do work again with the Zurich Flood Alliance, Francisco Yanni and the colleagues there at the IFRC. We really value the shining the flashlight for droughts, for heat waves, and other events that we're learning more from our partners to give the best data to make decisions. We can also do asset protection. We've got X number of schools in Haiti. We want to make sure if they are affected, our colleagues at UNICEF, we are advancing an MOU with them now to make sure they get the right data at the right time to protect all of their children. The event brief is fantastic and fully automated. Click the button, it's done in the cloud. Our event brief, which you'll see more of a photo of, was generated within seconds after the Haiti earthquake last fall, where we had worked for personally about a month, doing the response virtually with partners from U.S. Cyber Command to UNOCHA, the World Food Program. We generated that event brief within seconds, and it was given out to U.S. and UN colleagues and Haiti colleagues within minutes, and of course used by the UN broadly. And here's an example of the event brief. Of course, here's a volcano, Semeru, which is in Indonesia and always erupting quite regularly. As late, you can see the scale of the event. You can visualize it. You can see how much capital is exposed, how many people, how many households, and what is a good way to maybe respond to this. And so what are the key needs, what we call the lifelines? We work with the SPHERE guidelines, but also the FEMA guidelines in North America. What I love about the event brief, it says, well, you may be deploying to this event a volcano, but maybe you want to know what's the context. Is this a big eruption, or has again, thinking of Krakatau, we're thinking of Agung. We were just in Bali looking at that beautiful volcano. We want to have context. How often are volcanoes affecting this region? What are the advisories? What shots should I get? Is it COVID or other things? What is the news? What's the latest news? And maybe what's the weather? So we're very good at getting situational awareness. As you look here, you can see a typhoon that we were monitoring, some of the cameras that we pull in, and then another typhoon. We can see who's doing what where, 3 and 4W of our UN and IFRC partners. So we're very proud of this platform. Of course, it's called Disaster Aware because we want to make sure that you are aware of disasters globally. Here is again this event brief, and as we go further, you can see that we can take the baseline data that we have as we look across the region where this volcano is in Indonesia. We want to say, hey, well, at the provincial level, whether it's Sumatera Utara, Jawa Barat, or Nusa Tenggara Barat, what are these areas at the resilience level? So what areas may be most able to handle the events? What areas may need more help? And so that's based on doing our homework, or baseline assessment, doing the response, and having a long-standing relationship. I'd like you to see here that, of course, we've been busy, and this is just looking back to a year ago. You can see how many response events from 6 earthquakes, 21 cyclones. We know that hurricane season is spinning up in our Gulf, the Gulf of Mexico. And of course, Hawaii has been hit by cyclones before, wildfires, landslides, and of course, we did almost 1,000 COVID products during the last couple of years of this response. So it shows that our global coverage. And this is something that we're also very proud of, the JADE, Joint Analysis of Disaster Exposure. And this is that idea of data-driven decision-making, partnership, and predictive analytics for anticipatory action. And so this is something that, of course, took a lot of work with our partners at OSHA and the World Food Program. We're scaling it globally and doing similar work with the IFRC and with ASEAN nations. And of course, here's a good look at, from the Sulawesi earthquake over to a typhoon that may be hitting the Philippines. Of course, we work very closely with colleagues throughout ASEAN, but specifically the Philippines. And as I scale down here, this is what we're really excited about. If you take a look here, you can also, those that are online, take a look at the Go platform. IFRC has an outward-facing platform for 192 societies. To Justin, Luke, and the team who built this, it's open source software. But you can go into our platform, and when you see that dot on the map for Costa Rica that says there is a storm, it says how many people are affected in the flooding here. The exact same number, again, I'm looking right at it, 354,000 people estimated exposed using our all hazards impact model. This was all not done by hand. This was done using our advanced technologies, ICTs, and that same API is informing the analysis that's being done on the fly for the IFRC platform. So that ensures that we're all on the same page, a common operational platform using the best data. And as we say, getting the right data at the right time to make the right decision. Here's our joint assessments with the regional office in Latin America. We were very busy with the couple years ago, of course, there in the fall of 2020 with the hurricanes, sadly, that were affecting Nicaragua and the entire region. This is another example of advanced analytics. So how to make the best decisions on how is the wind, or in this case, the storm surge, and other effects of a cyclone affecting this area, with sadly, the long-standing flooding and other events that took many months to recover. We know that AI is a big part of it. We're also very proud that Ray Shirk and I, our executive director, is in fact an AI scientist who's been doing it for over 30 years before we knew what AI was. He's a big fan of it. We're scaling it with partners. This is me speaking at the World Summit of Artificial Intelligence. It was last fall there in the Netherlands. I'll be there again. Coming up for this next November, we always present at the World Summit of AI, and again, various AI for health events. So we know that privacy preserving AI algorithms that shared with partners at the UN and civil society can help be a force multiplier along with citizen science and governance. So again, that's kind of a level set on how we save lives with science and with partners. And of course, we want to all make sure that we have an inclusive effort working forward. So this is my contact information. Again, I'm Joel Meyer. I lead engagement work with our partners at PDC. I will take a look at the chat, and I'll turn over the floor to Anna and Samuel and the team. I want to thank our hosts. Thank you so much. This is a unique opportunity, and mahalo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joel, for such an insightful presentation. I think you've shown us how you've really buttressed some of the key points and things happening that participants, including us, will want to know. And I want to congratulate you and your team for the great work you're doing. I think it's quite extensive. And I can imagine how you really get by to do all these innovative acts to support or build resilience in the sub-region. And I want to thank you again for the continued collaboration. I know there's been a collaboration between us, and we look forward to more collaborations in the future. And I really got impressed by your presentation, which is very rich. I think it's enriching as well as quite intensive or comprehensive. We'll open the floor briefly for colleagues to just ask questions. If you want, he has shared his contacts, and the PDC, the Pacific Disaster Center, is always open to work with member states, and you can kindly reach out to him. As he mentioned, I know their doors are always open. If you have any question you want to ask for clarification, kindly either you raise up your hand or you keep it in the chat box. Let me see. Yes, thank you, Joel. He's kept the link.
And I did see somebody asking if it's in the Google Store, and it is. And again, it's PDC Disaster or Disaster Alert PDC, and it's in the Google Store. And I'll put a link in there for the mobile app. It'll be either on Apple if you're an iPhone person, or on Google and Android. And there's also the link I put in there. It looks great on a desktop. And so that's got 100 data layers. Anybody in the world can use it. And thank you, Samuel, for your great work. You really wove it together, and to Anna and the team, thank you again. Over to you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for sharing I think you just shared the link, and it will be helpful for those questions. I see a lot of claps, and yeah, we're really impressed about your presentation. How can we join with you? I don't know. I think he shared a link. You can interact with them, and that will be one way to join, or join the lab with the link. Yes. And Anna just shared the presentation. Is there any other question from participants you want to get clarification on? Okay, a brilliant presentation. Okay, so we want to thank you very much as we move to the next presentation, or the last one before we go for a brief break. Is there any question from the floor before we close this presentation? Any detailed training with us?
I will be putting links in there that will have training resources and the Disasterware app link for your phones. I'll do that right now, and I'll turn over the floor back to you, Samuel. Thank you all for the great questions, and mahalo. Thank you.
Thank you, mahalo from here, and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move to our next presentation, which will be delivered by Anna. She will be presenting more in depth about some of the innovative technologies we can leverage to build risks, or to ensure disaster risk reduction and build local resilience. So before she proceeds, she'll want to just share a video on the current toolkit we have in here, and now I'm sharing it quickly. So
before you play, may I say that thank you to Joel Myrie to join us today, and also to say to the audience that the PDC received the Sasakawa Award. So they have been globally recognized institution. So congratulations to PDC. Over.
And thank you, Anna. So we just check the video on the toolkits, then we proceed to Anna's presentation. Okay, thank you very much. Anna, you have the floor.
Thank you, Samuel, Dana. May I ask Bunyon to share my presentation? Thank you, Bunyon. So next slide, please. This part of the program I would like to share is related to Module 2 of the toolkit on the disaster risk informed governance. Risk-informed governance. Dana, if you can share again the link to the toolkit in the chat so participants can have a look. I already shared before this session, but if anyone has not checked the risk-informed toolkit, this presentation is related to Module 2. And the idea of this presentation is that I share with you the practical examples of technologies and innovation for disaster risk reduction and resilience. Next one, please. So the Module 2 includes 5 sections, and in basically section one is about unmanned vehicles, using unmanned vehicles to support DRR and resilience, robotics, and sensing systems with good examples. Part 2 is about additive manufacturing, innovative materials, the 3D digital printing. Part 3, it's about cloud computing, the 5G mobile technology, Internet of Things, IoT, and the distributed ledger technology or blockchain. This is very much used. Part 4 of the toolkit, of the module 2 of the toolkit, looks at big data analytics, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality. So this is some good examples on how this is used in DRR. And part 5 of the training module looks at social media, crowdsourcing, geographic information, volunteers geographic information, and citizen science. Next one, please. Basically, I would like to share a little bit how the story about science, technology, and innovation into the 2013 agenda. And if you can see, since June 1992, science and technology was in the Agenda 21 as a comprehensive plan of action. It was signed by the 178 countries to build a global partnership for sustainable development. And that was adopted in the Earth Summit in Rio, if some of you remember. I do remember, I was invited to that meeting. Then in the year 2000, UN member states adopted the Millennium Declaration. Many of you remember the MDGs. And the summit looked at also reduce extreme poverty by 2015. It was included science and technology into it. In 2002, we had the Johannesburg Declaration on Sustainable Development, and the plan of implementation is adopted at the World Summit of Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, in Africa. And then we have in 2012, the UN member state which adopted the future we want at the United Nations conference in Rio +20. I do remember that one too. So all of this meeting, including up to 2013, when the General Assembly of the United Nations established a 30-member open working group to develop a proposal on the SDGs. And then in January 2015, started the process of the post-2015 development agenda. Science, technology, innovation feature throughout the 2030 agenda, and is in fact there as 35 reference to technology throughout the agreement. So technology is sought first and foremost as a means to address all the 17 SDGs, just as it is a means for achieving the Sendai Framework goals. So as a fundamental component of development, transfer, and access itself. For example, science, technology, and innovation is considered a foundational means to many different ends, including gender equality, education, poverty reduction, energy, oceans, and other areas of development included in the SDGs. Next one, please. So the characteristics of technology for DRR is multi-purpose. So here, what we mean by multi-purpose is solutions that are relevant and useful before, during, and after emergencies. So as well in our daily lives. Examples in this regard can include mobile telephones, smartphones, which are employed in a range of solutions. Easy to learn and use. So the idea is, for example, there is no need for formal training in the use of social media, making them useful and emergency response. Scalable, so they should grow to accommodate demand, social media for emergency response, for example, and accessible and affordable. So accessible and affordable, we mean by regard to emergency response, low-cost mobile telephones have become more available, but also drones have low operation costs, allowing for frequent missions, offer increased spatial coverage, and do not require installation points, and can be deployed rapidly. Next one, please. We have also a Commission on Science and Technology for Development, and they met and have recommendations, including the promotion of data use in ways that that respect the citizens' rights. And it also, in one of the recommendations, is to ensure science, technology, and innovation for resilience and citizen science projects to be documented. Next one, please. In these same topics of science, technology, and innovation, UNDRR have several regional science and technology advisory groups. And they have the regional advisory group, including academia, institutions, and you can see in the picture is at the Asian Ministerial Conference for Disaster Risk Reduction. So in the Asian Ministerial Conferences, they met, for example, the ASTAC, the Asia Pacific Science and Technology groups. So they promote regional science and technology innovation efforts throughout these regional and science groups, and in the broader science and technology partnerships, which is very important when we talk about technology for DRR. Next one, please. I would like to share this case study from CARICOM on science, technology, and innovation for sustainable development, because they have a specific strategy. And there is very important that whatever effort from different regional groups and technologies available, they can be shared and integrated into the National Development Plan. So for example, in the Caribbean, the Council for Science and Technology have their strategy, which was already in 2007, and they have a regional science and technology innovation capacity development strategy release with a section on disaster preparedness. So the early version of their plan was shared. Something that from here is that the Caribbean Council of Science and Technology was established a while ago, since 1980, if I recall well, in Jamaica. So this organization is founded by contributions from member governments and the UN. And through this founding of projects, they sponsor and launch by the Council several frameworks and assistance on technology, science, and innovation. Next one, please. So now I would like to share with you leveraging digital technologies for DRR. Next one, please. And some concrete examples that we have seen since, for example, COVID-19 pandemic. So one of the examples is the digital technology used in the COVID-19 pandemic response. And there are many examples. These are from different sources of publications, formal publications. But we have heard a lot how many countries have done the contact tracing, the quarantine and self-isolation, the screening of infections, the clinical management, planning and tracing, and medical supplies through digital tools and technology. For example, in China, Australia, and Turkey, they use machine learning. This machine learning was very useful for epidemiological surveillance, example of the web page epidemic intelligence tools that they have, and the online syndromic surveillance they have. So this is an example of machine learning. Another one was technical tool was symptom reporting from Japan, for example, and Kazakhstan. They have these surveys applications on websites, and they can be uploaded in the smartphones. And these web-based epidemic intelligence tools are available for the citizens. Then we have, for example, the connected diagnostic devices from Australia, China, and Thailand, for example, which make the rapid case identification and screening for infection. It is a point of case diagnosis. And in countries like Korea, where we are based, UNPOG, they use the smartphone applications, which have low power Bluetooth technology. And that's what very useful for the interruption of community transmission. So the digital contact tracing, and we were informed, for example, if you were going to a restaurant and someone had COVID at the early stages of the pandemic in 2020, if someone with COVID was at that restaurant, for example, and you was very well informed, I myself use a lot this digital information. So this is some examples where technology and digital tools offer for us for the COVID-19 pandemic, but also for future pandemics. Next one, please. UNDESA has a compendium of digital government initiatives for COVID-19, and also on digital tools for governance, which are available in the compendium. We have, I will share with you the link. Let me try, I will share, it's not there in the slide. I will share after my presentation the link to the compendium, because it's interesting to share on how these digital government initiatives were used for informing citizens for also the e-participation, e-health, and partnerships. So you can find this compendium in the link I will share, which is from UNDESA. Next one, please. Now I will go through in depth a little bit on the toolkit. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, Module 2 of the Risk-Informed Toolkit, or Risk-Informed Governance for DRR Technologies, they have the case study here is about drones, how drones fly for relief in Puerto Rico. So the U.S. territorial island, Puerto Rico, was severely impacted by the Hurricane Maria in 2017. And the island infrastructure was particularly vulnerable to the storms. It is particularly vulnerable to storms, winds, and floods-related effects. And many populations became isolated. So in these conditions, access to life-saving medications and treatments is not often possible. So through the UAV system, were used in the weeks and months immediately following the events to address these concerns. And the program is to support remote communities that were still recovering from the initial events. And this also was initiated later on in 2019, that sought to better understand whether the UAVs are a viable delivery mechanism when standard operations are unavailable. So this is a very good alternative solution for delivery mechanisms in long distance communities. Thank you. Next one, please. Another case we have documented is from Vanuatu. It was a vaccine delivery, in particularly for those islands that are remote. Right now, UNDESA is working on preparation of a workshop in Vanuatu, and we understand the difficulties to reach out to those islands. They have many provinces in the islands, and they are quite isolated. So in this case, for vaccine delivery, 20% of the population does not receive vaccines for the archipelagos because of these remote islands. So in 2018, the facilitation of vaccines, not in 2018, this is already in 2018, yes. So the facilitation of vaccines delivery to those remote populations was aided by unmanned vehicles. So this is the first efforts of this type anywhere in the world. So we documented because was the first vaccination done through this unmanned vehicles transportation. I'm not sure, Muyon, if you can play the video. As you can see, there is no sound, but you can see how the vaccines were delivered through using these unmanned vehicles. The problem here is, for example, vaccines, they need to be kept in refrigerated temperature. So they need to be quickly delivered. And these unmanned vehicles was a very good solution, technology solution. Thank you, William. You can stop the video. Thank you. So I highlighted this example on unmanned vehicles in Vanuatu. Next one, please. Another example also in Vanuatu is the humanitarian cash transfers in Vanuatu. Same issue, remote islands. They in Vanuatu, they have multiple high-risk hazards. For example, they have volcano eruption, they have cyclones, they have tsunamis, landslide, they have really a lot. So here, the project was to, for these events, after the event, how they can provide recovery. And one of this feature was made by Oxfam, who themselves engaged with the private sector, the firms of Sempo and Consensai Solutions, to launch this cash and voucher assistance project, and which calls Unblock Cash. And the project here, to think about which technology this use, they use the blockchain network of Ethereum. Maybe some of you know this blockchain network Ethereum, and is designed to provide disaster impact people and households when they need financial assistance in a rapid, efficient, effective, easily, because they need to reach different households and they don't need to have many explanations. And it works very well. It was piloted in May 2019 in Vanuatu, and the cash was distributed using near field communications cards, which hold a balance of funds. So participants were able to spend the cash contained on the cards and participating vendors throughout their communities. I think it was a very win-win example in cash transfers using new technologies. Thank you. Next one, please. My next slide is about the smart city case. And I wanted to highlight Sondo, Korea, which is the city where we live. And I think, yeah. So here, the case of innovative smart cities initiatives which are emerging. And right now we're working also on a toolkit specifically for smart cities. Next one, please. And here is the example of Sondo, Korea, where I live and we are based, UNDRR Oniageti and UNPOG. And in this city where we stand, it's a city that is planned smartly, and it was constructed since 2008 with a range of public and private services, including transportation, energy, safety, and security, and also very good management of waste and waste management, which we share quite often with different member states. But in terms of technology and for DRR, they have a very good emergency and response services. They have the real-time emergency disaster information collection. They collect information from different departments. They do share through different departments operation information. So they share their information. So they collect it, but also very interesting, they can monitor the hazards, have immediately through the CCTV videos that are everywhere, including my office, they can find immediately what is the situation, the hazard, and then immediately react. But also they have a component for citizens' participation, and citizens can immediately also they can receive the public alert, but they also can provide information to the system. It's very well related and operational, and it's an example for innovative and technology for DRR. Next one, please. And my last example on cases is finding victims when they are trapped after an earthquake, for example. So when finding victims trapped in collapsed buildings, whether during a disaster triggered by natural hazard or a structural failure, is a difficult task, and we know, and technologies can help, and they can detect trapped survivors through our rubble and debris, have really the potential to maximize the efficiency of search efforts and save life. So here, the US Department of Homeland Security and the National Aeronautical and Space Administration developed a radar-based system called named Finding Individuals for Disaster and Emergency Response. The name is Finder. And that can detect a human heartbeat through 9 meters of crushed materials, 6 meters of solid concrete, and from a distance of 30 meters in open space. So this system was first field tested in scores of states and in search efforts by urban search and rescue teams throughout the United States. And the tests showed that the system was successful in locating and living survivors who were buried in 30 feet of mixed concrete, and it saved life. It was used in actual disaster following the 2015 earthquake in Nepal, and Also, although the system did not arrive until 4 days after the quake struck, for example, rescuers from China, Netherlands, Belgium, and members of the Nepali Army of North Nepal used the system successfully to detect heartbeats where they two other different buildings collapsed, two different structures collapsed. So they were able to rescue the victims alive as a result. So these technologies can save life, and that's why they are very important to know about them and seek collaboration and use them in your own countries. So leveraging digital technologies for DRR and resilience, it's a very important area in our toolkit. And with this, I end my presentation. Dana, over to you. Thank you for your attention. Oh, my video was off. Sorry.
Okay,
Thank you for your
Anna,
attention.
thank you so much for a great presentation. I know you've been able to clearly address the task which was assigned you or you took, which is sharing with us some of the innovative technologies that can be used or that is being used to help propel or address disaster risk issues and build resilience at the local level. Even in local communities, not just, but you also provided these practical cases, not just, I know one challenge people, or we always ask us, okay, these technologies are for advanced countries, this are this, but we find them being used in most remote areas, and we can also learn from them and find ways of adapting to them. So I want to thank you very much for a great presentation. It was quite insightful. Okay, so, is there a question from the floor for Anna on some of the technologies or some of the innovative cases she has delivered? I know we'll be sharing the PPTs with you. Okay, there is a question here, Anna. Can you elaborate more on how social media can be used for disaster preparedness and response and management? So how social media has been used. Are there any examples that has used social media in effective disaster risk management? So just want to get those examples. How? Yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Yes, social media can play a very good tool if it's well managed. I can remember the 2011 earthquake in New Zealand. There was a very interesting example where the youth, does this relate also to your question, Dana, earlier today about the youth application, youth involvement in DRR. There is a youth, Sam, that's his name. I will share the story in the website. It was very interesting case because after the earthquake happened in New Zealand, in the Christchurch province, it happens that the youth wanted to contribute to the recovery, the activities, because they were touched and they wanted to contribute, but the people in charge were telling the students that, do you have already a volunteer training certification in recovery and this and that? And of course, they are university students, they don't have. So Sam, what he did is to create an army of students to come and help for the rubbish and come to help anything they can do it to support the recovery process in Christchurch. So through the social media, they created this volunteer army of students, and they came together for days and days to clean Christchurch. So social media can play a very good tool if it's well managed and it's linked and used by the government. So they link to in fact, we know the mayor at that time, Mayor Dalziel, who was in charge, and she was paying attention to the social media, and they came and supported the recovery process, the recovery, the immediate phase after the disaster, and helping also the citizens. They gave a lot of help. So this is one example. If anyone, I don't know if Sanjaja is online and he wants to share any other example on social media.
Okay, so I think with social media to with the recent COVID is a crisis that is being managed, and we've come to see how social media has really been used to disseminate information, and people are able to share up-to-date information on social media, and even the platforms has also been a way of getting up-to-date or even warn people, okay, this is happening here, don't travel here, don't get in here, and it has been something that has helped effectively managing or coping or responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. And I know it happens even in terms of even floods and tsunamis. Sometimes we even hear about these disasters on the on social media rather than even the mainstream media. So there is this other question that most of the time or during disaster times we lost power supply or we lose power supply. What alternative can be suggested? I think quickly, you know, whilst we plan towards disasters, we also make sure that we plan that our infrastructure is resilient. So one way to do that is getting resilient infrastructure in place. Maybe setting up the electricity system when they are planning and they are trying to install them, or even the type of equipment they use to make sure that they are disaster proof or resilient, so that we find ways of doing it. So it's part of the planning and governance system, and even both the technical part and the planning part, we have to do that. And I know it's very challenging in many countries, especially in the developing world. But you go to most advanced countries that when it's raining, the light and power is on. But when you go to developing countries, even when it threatens to rain, there's power off. So it means that others are adopting resilient infrastructure whilst others aren't. So we have to find ways of using those infrastructure that are resilient. Yeah.
Thank you, Dana. I also saw one question about the Finder, the example I gave from the United States that was used in China and Nepal. So I think I will ask, I'm taking note that it's from Makati City, who is interested to know more about Finder, and we will make the link between Makati City and the Department of the Homeland Security National Aeronautical, who have the technology to link you and see how you can collaborate on this and how they can share information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. I think Sanjay have also provided a number of responses to some of the questions in the chat box, so you can kindly follow. I know we currently running against time, so I want to let us have a break. I know we are going to come back. We have a whole time for this discussion, so we have a whole time to be more interactive. So I'll note some of the questions. When we come back, we'll try to address them after the presentation. Yes.
Dana, yes. I see many interesting comments in the chat. So before the end of the day, can you give me some minutes and I can share our new e-learning platform for participants to join, and we can continue the conversations in the e-learning platform in the forums.
Okay.
Thank you.
You do it at the end of the day, not now.
Yes,
right?
No, at the end of the day. Thank you.
Okay. So we will be taking a 10-minute break. We will come back at 4:05. So let's have a break and come back at 4:05. We have a presentation and we have a discussion session, and I know most of the questions will be addressed there too. Thank you very much and see you soon. I hope you all join. Those who haven't registered their names, try to put in the chat box, and let's keep the interaction going. Thank you very much for your patience and active engagement. Thank you. See you soon. Hello, Victor. Can I test your mic?
Hello, hello. Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay.
Very good.
That's great. Great. And I think I made a test of sharing the screen.
Okay.
Let's just have a look.
Yeah.
Could you see it?
Yeah, I see it, but it's still trying to open full screen. Maybe.
Yes, exactly what I'm trying. Oh, it's okay.
Yes.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Sorry for waking you up in the morning.
No, it's 10 o'clock
Fine.
already here. Yes,
Yeah.
and I have a separate meeting. I'm in one Moldovan village.
Oh, okay.
So,
I see.
Coming from Estonia, so very digital.
That's good. I want to hear from your end. Yeah, I think they'll be joining soon, so that we just start. Thank you
Very much for inviting me.
and thank you very much for coming too.
Hello, everyone from around the world.
Yes. We have a minute to start. Yeah. Okay. Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much again for your continued engagement with us on this as key partners in accelerating progress on building resilience in local communities, and most especially making sure that we are able to work towards achieving the global agenda. So as I mentioned, we have our next speaker. He's going to share with us some experience on how we could leverage innovative technologies, especially coming from Moldova and working with Estonia, which is one of the top countries in promoting digital technology, so been highly ranked. So our next speaker, our distinguished speaker is Mr. Victor Guzon. He's an expert on digital transformation at the Institute for European Policies and Reforms in Moldova. Victor has worked in various governments and NGO positions, including as an ambassador of Moldova to Estonia. And currently, Victor resides in Estonia, managing a consulting company specializing in digital transformation, and also a public administration reforms in the country. He actively and has collaborated with the United Nations agencies, including UNDP, the Council of Europe, the Venice Commission, and e-governance agencies across the world. And he has been a systematic promoter of digital transformation in Southern and Eastern Europe. So with this introduction, I would like or have the pleasure to welcome Victor to share with us his experience. Victor, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Thank you very much, everyone across the globe from Moldova, from a social enterprise in a village. It's called Rezeni. I came with a delegation from Estonia to speak about digital transformation in rural areas. They are in a separate room. I'm with some 7 workers and team of this social enterprise here. Why I'm saying that? I'm saying that doesn't matter where we are now, doesn't matter which corner of the world, doesn't matter with whom, and we could always be super connected at super speed. Yes, we could use our devices, our computer, our internet connections in different manners. We could, make use of the technology. But the problem is that, as the Deputy Secretary General of the UN said rightly, the next divide or big divide will be the digital divide. And I could also say that from my perspective, this is not already the next divide, but we are already there. We already are using, all of us, the connections. We are using the phones. And the big question mark is what we are doing with this device. Which kind of benefits we could obtain from different perspectives. And I could tell you directly from my perspective, but my perspective, it's very interesting because I was born in the Republic of Moldova. And I was visiting Estonia, the leading digital nation, the world first time, I think 13 years ago. I used zero digital technologies at that moment, zero e-governance solutions. And now living in Estonia for almost 13 years, I reside there now, I'm using only digital solutions. And I could tell you from my personal perspective that the difference is huge. The benefits which digital transformation is giving to everyone, it's absolutely amazing, including the topic of our discussion. Disasters, situations, climatic change, wars, because right now, right here in this building, those people around me, actually, they are also dealing with the huge refugee crisis at our border with the war in Ukraine. And I will tell a little bit about my personal perspective and the perspective from the different position, and also the solution which I personally use every single day. So just a little bit of the context, because I would like to make a little bit more discussions than teaching or saying how many solutions we are using in Estonia, for example. But let's jump to this one. I don't know how many of you have seen this kind of very important chart. It's called all of society concept. Could you, Samuel, confirm that you see my my screen?
Very clear, useful.
Yeah, so just to be very clear, now all the countries in the world, in a way or another, are running into this digital transformation. And it's important to mention that before this current pandemic, it was a huge problem, a huge disaster, a global one, yes? Now, all the countries, or most of the countries, they had in a way the digital strategies, but not too much activities inside there, because it was like, okay, it's nice to have, it's something there, okay, we have enough time, and the professionals will do slowly their stuff. And suddenly, in the question of weeks, so the global outbreak came. And just think from this perspective, a digital solution, which is basically a simple QR code, became developed very quickly based on a need, yes, and became very quickly the equivalent of the passport, because you cannot travel without this in the European Union and the place where I live. So you need a passport, and a digital solution, which was developed in the matter of weeks and or months, and not only developed, but accepted by most of the countries. Yes, and used by most of the countries actually as a second solution. So think from this perspective. So when we are in a disaster situation, we are able to develop such solutions which are quickly solving one problem. So more than this, I could tell you that now after the outbreak, because it's like end of the pandemics in a way, in different countries, different situations, but now people understood that we could develop a lot of solutions, but it's not too much, how to say, a strategy anymore. And this is also another part of the problem. I'm telling you from another perspective. I am coordinator of the national strategy of the Republic of Moldova for the next decade to come on behalf of UNDP and the government of the Republic of Moldova. And we're praising this chart we see in front of me, which is called all of society concept or approach in this inclusive digital transformation development. What does it mean, basically? And I wanted just to underline is that no one, no person, no citizen should be excluded from this digital transformation. This is not something for the super professionals. This is for every citizen of your country, for you personally. Yes, and everyone should be included. Why should be included? Because it doesn't matter how clever your government is or super professionals, IT specialists are, but if they're not taking into consideration your needs, beneficiaries' needs, the needs of the refugees from Ukraine and Moldova, for example, and how they are, the level of preparedness, then this digital solution will be there, but the level of penetration will be very limited. Or we have these countries and this, idea everywhere. We see everywhere in the world. I have this a little bit more European context, so I could guarantee that that's the case, discussing with various even ministers across Europe. So what we have here, we have 5 super pillars, I'm calling them, yes? Just you cannot develop a sustainable digital transformation. Also, to respond to the crisis situations and to be resilient, if you're not taking into consideration those 5, you could see here infrastructure. So this is a problem in some areas, but also here in Moldova, the country where I'm right now in this moment, we see already a huge divide between the cities. The big city, Chisinau, is like 30 kilometers from here, and the village here. So we're speaking about connectivity, innovation, all these elements of authentication, so on and so forth. Without a proper involvement with the feeling of ownership of the government, this will not be the case as well. Regulation, because we're super aware of our data, how it's circulating, how secure is, who is using, who has the right, who not. Without a proper involvement of the business community, we cannot develop a sustainable solutions. And most important, I think, is people. I always say that digital transformation, it's 90% human, understanding, ownership, user-centric, user-centricity and stuff like that, and 10% of the it's technology. So once again, this is the message, super important. Technologies are everywhere. All of you has computers and have computers and internet, and they are becoming super quick. They are becoming cheaper. And now the big question mark is how to use them in such a way that they will give us, this, they will make our life easier, including fighting with different disaster situations. And disaster situation could be different. And I'll just tell you a little bit about my what I'm using. And when we speak about the next slide, I think it's here. When we speak about this disaster resilience situations, we always try in a way to understand how we could use the digital solution to solve this problem or to face this particular problem. But I could tell you from Estonia, the country where I live, or where my family lives, that we're taking it seriously from digital perspective before this disaster happens, before the heavy rain is flooding something, before fire is starting, or before a military conflict could be. So everyone in Estonia, including myself, this is actually print screen from my phone. I made them yesterday. So we have a app. It's in my phone right here. So I am already aware about many situations which could potentially happen. It's because it's much better to be prepared before and to react based on the very clear protocols of actions and the preparedness, than to react post factum. Because post factum, when disaster already is happening, then it's already everyone is rushing to save their lives or their property, or to put their kids in a safe location, or to save their money, or I don't know, it could be situations. But for example, me personally and my family knows exactly what to do, how to be prepared, because we are also not far away from different, disaster potential threats, let's say like that, from different perspectives. So what we have in this, you see some of the, it's called Ole Valmis. Ole Valmis in Estonian is like be prepared, very simple, be prepared. So it's super important. So we have like general rules, how to behave in different situations, fire safety, security threats. And security threats could be different one. It could be like starting from a, unclear situation or shooting and finishing with the war. So or first aid or disruption of the services. So no water anymore. So what to do if no water anymore? Because if you are not well prepared for that, then probably you could make mistake. You could use some water which is not good for consumption and stuff like that. Or for example, we have this kind of supply reserves. So this is we are taking this very seriously in Estonia. And when we say about supply, we don't mean only food and only water. So we have this kind of package, how to stockpile the supplies needed in case of disaster. We try to have at least 7 days supplies at home, and this means not only food. This means also, the batteries, a small radio, medical supplies, evacuation supplies, different kind of tools, and how to behave, in different situations. In situation for kids, for example, for pets, and for different situations. Maybe if you'll have possibility to dig a little bit here, you will find many interesting situations. So once again, what I would like to underline is that it's much better to be prepared for every kind of situations. And we are taking this quite seriously, to tell you, and it's like campaign, you know, campaigning, how to do it, why this is so important, but also different situations. We have this different situation, for example, what if an explosion in your neighborhood, or a mass events or behavior, or it's kidnapping or a sudden attack in a public place, so different situation, or acting in an occupied territory. So this is so important to mention. So we're taking it seriously to prevent it, to be ready, because the readiness of every single person leads to the super readiness of the entire society. And I think this is my first message. So I'm using this. This is a print screen from my phone. Let's move a little bit to the next one. Our colleagues discussed a little bit about this pandemic situations, and also this is a print screen. Actually, this is not print screen, but I have this application in my phone as well. This is Hoya. So we had this outbreak like everywhere. Yes, these pandemic situations, but actually what we did in Estonia from the very beginning, taking in consideration that everyone has a phone and everyone has these protocols of exchange of information between the various phones without changing information, just very and high level of preparedness of the population. So we had this app. It's a very simple app. You actually are downloading into your phone, and you are allowing people to see this sensitive data, but not the person exactly who. And actually this app is informing you if you've been in close contact with someone who was infected. So this is super important because, for example, if I will see that yesterday at 12 o'clock, I don't know, in this location more or less, because they are interconnected with the GPS geographical location, I had a close contact. Now is not anymore the super case, yes, because it's like diminishing. But think about the first month of pandemic when everything was closed. It was super important to control this disease. So this was working very well. But also it was a super mechanism to see how the pandemic is developing and spreading across the country, maybe to close some particular villages. And this actually helped a lot Estonian government to predict and not to close the country. So we never had a super closed society. It always was possible to travel, and no closed cities, but it was very careful analysis based on that. So it's a very quick, developed in the matter of weeks, I think, in a strong cooperation. And just coming back to the previous charges, all of society, because everyone participated. The government say we need something this quickly. The IT sector came together, some, I don't know how many, 10, 20 companies, let's do it together. Civil society spread the word about that. Civil society means also people using massively, including myself and my family. So this was helping to be very, very efficient in fighting this outbreak, and not to close the country, not to close the economy, even not to close the kindergarten. I have a kid, he's going to school this year, but he never in this pandemics was, so not a single day the kindergarten was closed. So this is super important, I think. So the next one, I will give you an example from Moldova right now, right here in this particular moment. And I know quite well how this solution was developed by friends of mine here in Moldova, and they did it in 3 days. 3 days. So suddenly in this year started a war, and we are neighbors here in Moldova with Ukraine. Huh? So almost 500,000 people. Think about that. So suddenly 500,000 people altogether passed through the territory of the Republic of Moldova, leaving the war zone. And right now, I think almost 100,000 people live in Moldova. It's mostly women and kids. So we have a huge amount of refugees. Think about that, because we have a little bit more than 2 million people in Moldova now. So the basic idea of this Dopomoga is like help in Ukraine, yes, to help refugees. So it started from a very simple platform. Once again, it was developed in 3 days. And now the level of penetration is 50% of all the refugees from Ukraine are using it. And the level of penetration is super high. Because for the first days, it was like this, that this was just a register, or the refugees registered themselves somehow. And later, you see here is different types of thing which appears later. So in a modular format, for example, the official information, the healthcare, for kids, transportation, how to find, or for example, how to find no, this solidarity fund for air tickets across Europe, or I know psychological help or financial helps or telecommunications, different clothes and work and all of them, they were developed very quickly based on the needs. And this is my next message. So why the people are so important? If you are developing just a solution to be developed, but you are not taking into consideration people and their needs and the final beneficiary needs, then maybe this is a nice, beautifully looking location and app, but actually the use is not very big. I have a few slides just to give you a little bit of, so I just received this in my phone. Let's see it in this particular phone, because I received yesterday, or no, on Tuesday, 2 days ago, and just decided to make a print screen, because I think it's thinking a little bit more about how deeply we are already in digital transformation. So just receiving an alert that please warning, it's heavy rain, strong winds expected 2 days ago, and please find a shelter. So behave compulsory. But what do we know how to behave? This is in Estonia. I know how to behave. I know that, during this particular hours when I receive, based on the Ole Valmis application, once again, this is interconnected, everything. I know how to behave. I know that my son should not go to this beach. We're living near the beach in Estonia, because the risks of falling off the trees is much higher. So I'm better prepared, but also the state, it's helping me a lot to understand this. Let's see, I think I have some other slides here. So just think a little bit about this. And, this is Estonia, 1.3 million people. But, every Estonian, according with the statistics, it's interfering online with the state and the services, but we could do absolutely everything with 2 exceptions. Online in Estonia, we cannot only marry online and divorce, because, state is saying that we need a little bit more time to think about these super important elements. But think about that. Some 170 median interactions online with the state. I mean, all the services. And now think how many resources we are saving with this. According with the very, very simple calculations, only the use of digital signature, we're using only digital signatures from our phones across the globe, it's saving at least 2-3% of our GDP. Think about this sum, because very few countries in the world are spending this amount of money for their defense. And actually, this is the threshold for NATO countries. And think about one simple element. I think you'll be amazed, but in Estonia, in the last elections, 47% of the people voted at the parliamentary, local, and presidential and European Parliament elections online. So, and you see in 2005, and we are voting already 17 years online, no one is even thinking that this is something special. This is just an ordinary e-governance solution in Estonia. But think about this perspective. You have 1 week to vote from every point on the globe. Doesn't matter if I'm in Bangladesh, in Moldova, in the village, or in the desert. If I have internet connection, I could participate in the life of my country and send to the parliament, to the government, to the president, the most appropriate people for my opinion. And this is my supreme right. I think it's just giving a little bit of understanding for you how deeply we are already there. One perspective, and the second one, I think it's very important. Think from this perspective in 20 years from now, but it's already the reality. Where these particular countries, which are implementing this kind of solution, will be in 20 years from now, and where the countries which think that no, this is not in my yard, this will not save my life, this will not save my property and stuff like that. This is something for countries like Estonia, where they will be. So coming back to what the Secretary General of UN said clearly, the next big divide will be digital divide. I think we're already here, and every single day, it's a day to start. And just to finish with a conclusion, I'm sorry to say that, but actually I think we have just one very simple choice: to adapt to the new technological. It's a revolution. It's the change of the mindset, is the change of how the society are acting. And we have just one solution, or to remain, and to be, in the far away from this, and to be less competent, less prepared for everything, including resilience to different disasters, or to adopt it now. So I'm kindly asking every one of you, ask from your governments, ask from your municipalities, from your leaders of opinion, ask for support, learn as much as possible, because the difference between governance state like Estonia, and now I'm trying, I do my best every single day together with the government and UN, UNDP and different organizations to implement this in Moldova as well. And I kindly ask you to do the same. And if I will be super happy to answer to all of your questions after this, let's say, discussion here. And I kindly ask Samuel and his colleagues to send me every single question. I promise I will respond to all of them. And let's be in touch and let's learn from each other. I think it's super important. I will stop my presentation here. I will be super happy to answer every possible question. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Victor, for such an inspiring delivery. I know colleagues have been wowed by your presentation, and I'm not surprised you are really championing this great issue or success of Estonia. I will want colleagues to share their questions in the chat box, but whilst we wait, I would just want to highlight some few things. One, I got very much happy that simple technologies Estonia is using is helping people in vulnerable situations, just like the refugee situation in Moldova and other places. And it's something that is not, we would have said that, oh, refugees are handicapped or they are days or displaced person, but with just basic mobile phone telephone technology, they are able to get service delivered to them. And I get excited or happy to also hear, that Estonia is so digitized that you can do everything in Estonia through digital platform, except two things, marrying or divorce. So that's what they only need you in person. Everything can be done online. And I see, or when we met together, I see Victor doesn't maybe carry a supercomputer. He just carries his mobile phone, and he believes in this mobile phone that it can help him do anything, anyhow, anywhere in the world. And it's something that we can also know or learn from. So whilst we wait for questions, I just want you to also share with us what could be some of the key, maybe in brief, some of the key drivers that drove the digital transformation in Moldova from your point of view as having worked with them. So for other countries to also listen and hear from you. Yeah, maybe 4 or 5, yeah.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Samuel, for this question. And actually, there, not only in Moldova, but everywhere, the elements are the same. First of all, I think it's the connection, because in Estonia, this is based on understanding that the internet is a social right. Think about it. So it's cheap, it's everywhere. And it's like, we are saying like this, you are going to the bathroom, you're opening the water tap in a way. Yes, in Europe, this is everywhere. And you expect that the water is coming from there. So, connections, it's super important. Why? Because everyone should have the possibility by default. So think about that internet as a social right, it's important. Number 2, I think, is the understanding and willingness of the leaders of the nation in different perspectives, what and how important this is, and how the solutions are solving different problems. And the understanding that there is no economy anymore, just simple economy, but it's digital economy. Because I absolutely, I could check it with every one of you. Give me any level of our lives, any ministry, any, and you will find a solution to make your life easier using a digital service. And think about that this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. It was the interesting story about the vaccines and drones and stuff like that. But think from another perspective. In Estonia, we have 1,700 islands. Not all of them are populated, but these probes, because you cannot send a plane and a helicopter to every single person to take these probes for the COVID. So it was used these drones. The drone is going there, and it's sending to the mainland this probe, and it was much quicker, much cheaper. Think from this perspective. Or the voting, for example, in Czech Republic, they were using in the parkings because just to avoid that the people are there. So I think the second one is to assure that our leaders of our nations in different perspectives, they understand it and they lead us to us. And here is the third element, but maybe the second, maybe the first, or not prioritizing, but the people. Because if the people, and this is the case everywhere, if the people are more into the digital, the digital solution become very sticky. Because once you understand that this is solving one problem 10 times quicker and cheaper than visiting an official somewhere, then you will never ever want to do it again and to wait in this 10 hours to solve a problem, or maybe not to solve it. So they will always rely on a better solution. And this is so important that, because this is around the globe, and think from this perspective, that, early adopters always will be just few of them, maybe few percentage of them. After this, some 15%, maybe they will say yes, but when this critical mass of, let's say 20% are using, everyone almost will like to use it. So please put a little bit of soft pressure to everyone. Okay, this works in Estonia, why we cannot do it? Because previously it was a lack of understanding. Now I think this expertise is everywhere. Now computers are becoming cheaper, more powerful, and everywhere. So that's so important to mention. And I think it's the regulation, the fourth, let's say like that. Because also don't forget about security of data, where and who is using your security of data, because they are interconnected. If you have the feeling that your data is not secure, or doctor is using your security and it's showing to his friend your medical data, you do not trust. And this leads me to the last moment, because this last element, this is trust. So without building the trust in digital transformation tools, you will probably we have cases like that. I discussed with one advisor to one president of one European country. What's the problem? We have 1,300 digital solutions, but I was running it was in Sofia in Bulgaria, European EU country, but all Sofia was full of queues at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was running and making pictures. Okay, and what's the reason? If you have 1,300 solutions, if the people are not using them, or they don't know about that. And I think this is the last element. Don't think that digital transformation is the advantage of the rich countries. That's not the truth. I know countries, Germany, for example, I'll give you a direct example. I visited last week. It's much less digitized and the process much more complicated. But Estonia is not a Germany. So Estonia is not the richest country in the world. So this shows exactly how to complement. All these 5 elements are complementary. Build the trust, press, leadership, basic technological elements, and the internet as a social right. I think this is 5 elements. It's a long discussion. I could discuss for weeks about this topic, but I think that's the quick answer to your question, Samuel. Thanks.
Thank you again, Victor, for such a great delivery. I know you made it very logically out. You outlined it very logical. Mentioning how we should find it as a social right. So the other one also.
Dana, Samuel, I see a question. May I quickly respond?
Yeah,
it's Jason Vileza from Philippines, I understood. So how to make accountable those who hold information, digital, particularly the government, and so on and so forth. It's the case from Philippines, I see. I could tell you one interesting case. You see my phone, it's my kid here. Yeah. But actually I could open right now. A special application is about the data tracking, because once data is checked, it doesn't matter who is checking my data, President of Estonia, if he's checking right now, or the head of the army, I will see that President of Estonia checked my data. And this is the baseline. Why the President of Estonia checked my data? It could be, just because the tracking system is here. It's in the infrastructure, in this environment, digital environment. No one could delete the data, and no one could change the data. And this is exactly why I'm saying about the trust, because I trust that the government, it's showing me who accessed my data. and that my data are private. But also what is super important, I have another application here. It's about my is healthcare portal. So, you know, healthcare data is always a sensitive one. But what you probably don't know is that I have 3 levels of access to this. I could leave it open to everyone, like all medical stuff around Estonia. And actually now it's in Finland as well, because the data are interconnected. Because I will, you know, if I'm calling to a disaster situation, again, if I'm calling the emergency in Estonia, the first thing they are always asking is your personal code. Why this is so important? Because the time is critical. If I'm calling and they're coming to me, they know about me, everything. They know my blood group. They know that I have this kind of pill, which could potentially enter into, you know, conflict with another medicine. So I'm saving time. They're coming to me already prepared. But, you know, in some cases, if you have a little bit more time, you could save your physical capacities or your life even, you know, in the case of heart attack and stuff like that. So it's super important. I have the second option. I could leave the data only to my personal doctor or the doctor I trust, or to close to anyone. But based on trust, I'm leaving it open, me personally, because I would like, if something will happen with me tomorrow morning or this, no God, but nevertheless, I know that I have the biggest or the best chances to be saved, me and the my family. So I think this is super important. And that's why I showed you this, all of society, all these elements are super important. So all of them are super important. And this is how we are solving this in Estonia. Sorry, but I think it was a super good question. And I think the answer responded to this particular question. Jason, I don't know if I think it's, or you know, Samuel, please.
Yes, I think your last part in the first one was even addressing this, which came to the issue about engagement and trust. And the question he just posed and you also tried to answer. I don't know if whether Jason, I think if he has a follow-up question or anybody has a follow-up question on this great presentation. Is there any other question or somebody wants to mention something?
Yeah, I just feel absolutely free. Maybe you don't have a question now, but maybe you'd like to, in the future, any one of you, you would like to enter in a more specialized, let's say, like this solution, or how we came there, or how we developed it. It is not an easy task. I understand it. There are a lot of people who say, oh, this is science fiction. And there are a lot of people who say, no, this will never be reality in, I don't know, Philippines, Moldova, or Mexico, or US. But I could tell you, because I see Fatima to Zahora, it's saying that it was very informative, encouraging. And I would like just to stay here a little bit for encouraging. You know, I think the exchange and this kind of event, exchange of information, I think they're very useful. And Samuel, I think it's very good. And thank you for organizing this kind of exchange. Because now think from another perspective, this is not only that Estonia or me personally would like to give it to you, but you never know when a good solution and where this and by whom this solution could be developed. So I'm also asking you to think about this, to discuss with your friends and your colleagues and your leaders, which kind of solutions you could have. So because the sharing is caring, I think, in this particular, and the human problems are the same, disasters are the same. And I think the answer to these questions we could find together. So I will be super happy also to listen maybe in the future, to be in contact and to exchange maybe something new, totally new, and encouraging us, Fatima is saying, could develop. Mm-hmm. Okay, here it's a question from Jason. It's also saying that, you know, tracking system, yes, this is super important, but also think from this perspective. The level of democracy, openness of society is in direct relations with the openness of data. Yes, because, you know, give a tracking system to an autocrat who would like to control everything, and of course he will use it for bad. It's like everywhere. If it's something could be used in a good way, a car could be a very nice way of transportation. A car could be your killing machine if you're not respecting the rules. So I'm always coming back to this fourth element, Samuel, I said about regulation. Rules should be there. People should feel that this is helping them without interfering in their life and without, you know, breaking their rights. Thanks, Samuel.
Yes, thanks so much once again. I know it had been an excellent presentation, and just as Mohammed is saying, it's been very insightful, and we really appreciate your time and great insights you've shared with us. I know it's been very practical, and you've come to further highlight. I know this is also interconnected with the risk-informed governance system, where you mentioning trust, you're mentioning getting the right regulations, you mentioning issues about leadership. Leadership is important, and also putting the citizen at the center, whilst making sure that we also identify our rights as to what we deserve. So I think the accountability there is between government and the people, as well as issues about transparency, and as well as making sure the system is efficient. And I think we've really been inspired by your presentation, and we look forward to engaging more with you in the future. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Victor.
Bye.
Okay, so we want to just go straight to the last part, which is trying to have a quick idea or recap of some of the discussions. And we're going to have a brief Mentimeter again, maybe kind of questions to know how we can better help build resilience at our own communities. And trying to build this local resilience at the community, we're talking about citizens engagement, we're talking about multi-stakeholder engagement. So this other question we have in here is saying that, what do you think is accounting for this level of, no, okay, I think we should go to the first one first, maybe Anna. So, but this is, just go to menti.com again and use this code. Okay, go far back. I think we have a,
I think we're in the right. Who are the key stakeholders?
okay, yes. So we want to know the key stakeholders in your community. Okay, thank you, Anna. Or country who can contribute to disaster risk reduction and build local resilience. We just want to know who are some of the key stakeholders who come to mind when we're looking at this, because we have to better engage with the people who matter in society, and how do we build it. So I see responses come in. Kindly go into menti.com and use the code 48804669. So we have government, we have CSO, we have community, we have national government, yes, we have business sector, we have mobilized, marginalized sectors, yes, you know, they are key stakeholders. And we have local government units, we have local government reps, we have governments, yes. Yeah, keep them coming. So we just want to reflect on some of the things we could help, or we want to identify some of the situations in the background so that we could find, okay, this is the challenge we have in there. Who can we engage with? Yes, keep them coming. I think we can have 1 more minute, then we go quickly to the next question. Yes. Okay, I think we have 16 now. Yes, yeah, local, the academia or academic sector, private sector, government, yes. So we all know the government is important. We come to understand government, the youth, yes. We have households, yes. We have differently able, yes. We have the church or religious bodies. We have local governments, the youth, yes, business sector. Okay. A few more, then we go to the next question quickly. Yes, we have research institutions, we have local governments, we have the charity organization, INGOs, differently abled. Okay, I think if we could get a few more, then we go. Yes, the media, the private sector, yeah, the people, yes. Okay, then let's go to the next one to see, yeah, academic sector from Nepal. Let's go to the next question. The next question is that, are they fully engaged and participating in disaster risk reduction and its management? Yes, no, somehow, I do not know. So we've identified these key stakeholders. We want to know how much they are engaging and collaborating together. Yes. Okay, I see somehow being kind of topping, followed by yes and no. Yes. Okay, keep them coming and let's move quickly. We just want to have a perspective on this and see if whether we could find ways of addressing it at our local community level or our country or societal level. Yes, no, somehow, I do not know. Okay, so we find that there is a challenge or a gap in this sector where stakeholders are somehow not aren't, they are somehow engaged, and the other responses saying that no, and a few other ones, not a few exactly. We find it encouraging. Citizens or these stakeholders are really engaging. Okay, so let's move to the next one. Yeah, we have somehow again coming from the chat box. So what is the level of collaboration and cooperation between the government, or between government and the local authorities? Okay, I think there was a mistake there. So what is the level of engagement? We want to specifically narrow it down to local authorities and government. What is the level of engagement? Because we're talking about coordination between the national and local. Is it really, what's the level of cooperation and collaboration between them? Yeah, I think there is 222 battling here, medium. Yes, we want to see how the local government and the central government, or government and local authorities, are really collaborating or cooperating. Yes, medium, we have high, low. We have about 30 seconds more. Okay, so we move to the last question. I think the last or second to last. Yeah, local government context. Yeah, in the local government level, we wanted to know. So what do you think is accounting for this level of collaboration and engagement between the local government authorities and other stakeholders? Okay, let's just put it between government and local authorities. So we already mentioned the level of engagement, collaboration with them. What do you think is the issue? That they are collaborating more, or they are collaborating less, or they are not collaborating at all? What do you think is the challenge or the issue accounting for this level? If it's high, why do you think, or what do you think? Somebody mentioned inclusivity. So he thinks they are low, interoperability, yes. Inclusiveness, so lack of inclusiveness, data silos, the history of disasters, different political prioritization or priorities, visible issues, no ownership, yes, lack of coordination, yes, communication, lack of cooperation, yes. Okay, can we progress quickly? Let's receive more responses, then we keep them coming. Yes, so it's high from Jericho Casilian. Yes. So what do you think is accounting for this level of collaboration and engagement? If it's low or high, what is accounting for it? Can we submit a few more, then we move to the last one? Okay, so let's move to the last question. Okay. Okay, sorry, I thought there was another one. Okay, so we get to maybe do you want to share the results, or that was it? Yeah, it came already, so no need to share them again. We get to understand the situation on the ground. We get to get the presentations delivered, and both from a risk-informed perspective as well as from the digital perspective. And also, I think somebody's not muted. Okay, so we also get to understand the situation on our personal level, either in our country or community context. And I think this gives an idea in the way we're going to proceed with the next stage of our engagement with you. And I think if there's any other question somebody wants to ask, I know there were a couple of questions in the beginning, which if somebody wants to have a question, we have a minute or two to address a question, a pending question, or they were answered. Okay, so in the absence of any other question, I would just want to ask Anna to invite Stefan to give a short presentation about how we can better engage you on a platform being developed. Yes, thank you. Anna, over to you.
Thank you, and we are very well on time. Thank you, Dana, for your great moderation. So now I would like to share with all of you that we have created an e-learning platform from UNDESA for you to get together and communicate, continue the conversation with the speakers, but between yourself, share experience, and also get access to all the presentations. And that's all was made possible because my colleague Stefan Haschler from CDPMO of UNDESA, who is online, and he's going to share with you how to access the e-learning platform. Over to you, Stefan. And William, if you can add in the chat box. Right, he's giving you the indications to how to get into the course webpage. Over to you, Stefan. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Anna, and good afternoon, everyone. I will first put my email address in the chat. If you have any questions later, just reach out to me and I will be responsive. So I will share my screen now. Maybe it's easiest to share the full screen if we go somewhere else. Oh, I think here we are. Hopefully you can see the screen now. I started with an empty screen, and also I just created an account for myself, a new one, so I experienced exactly what you will see. In the chat there's already the correct URL. I will put it here, and this you will also receive by email address as far as I know. My email address, so in this case it's a new one, is also my name. I can change this later, but this is all explained in the platform. And as standard password for the first time, it is just change me. I cannot make it visible here, but maybe I type it here on top, just change me, one word. And when you first log in, I will be forced to change my password now. We'll just have to repeat the change me, and then I set a new password. To be honest, I will use anything, and I hope that this will work for now. Yeah, I'm not prepared. So let's see. And then the password has changed. And if you continue, you will also have to accept some privacy policy. Just go to next. So this is a step we need to have, also code of conduct. And I have to accept it, yes. And now I'm prepared, and I will be prompted to the course. You already saw it is now fully loaded. If you at any time lose the course, you can just use the URL, and you will be here, right back here. And in the course, you see course overview, and here's also how to contact us. And Anna, I think some parts are not filled yet, but they will be here, but you find for sure my email address. So I think you will be fine navigating. You can just click on these tiles and they will open, and you can close them here and go to the next one. And I think most importantly, Anna, the forums will be here for you to get together and to communicate with each other, right?
Thank you, Stefan. Yes, so
Yeah.
every presentation will be in each of the sessions. So for today, on 7th of July, in the next hours, we are going to upload the presentations, and we are also going to upload the presentations of Tuesday. So as tomorrow, the forums will be open, and please feel free to start discussions between yourself, as I mentioned. Stefan, anything else that we need to learn from the platform?
I would say yes. There is also a document explaining this here, but maybe because we are now together, most important, the top part of the platform should be explained. Here you could get some notifications for the course if something is very important. So for now, there's nothing for me, or maybe from the forum a notification. I think it's good to know that here are two things to click. This is my profile, which is not set up now, but you could then go to your profile and maybe add additional information. For now, there's not much, and maybe you want to change your username or something. So this is one important. Click here and you see also the door to log out. I think these two are important. And if you go here, you can see your courses. You could change the language here. If you are in the course, which I'm not now because I'm on my account, but if you're in the course and you click on, I have to scroll up again on these three lines, then you get more information here, and you can also navigate through the course easier, maybe. I think that is everything, Anna, you should know here.
Thank you, Stefan, for a quick overview on the e-learning platform. So we invite everyone, you are all registered in the platform, so you can just click on the link my colleague just shared, which is in the chat box. And if not, you can contact us at any time. We will give you to join the forums, the discussion, and also we will see if you can download the certificate. So we are finalizing the platform for you, and I hope it will be very useful in the next days. Thank you. It will be open until end of August. So we will finish the course next week, but you can continue download and reviewing the video records. Not everyone has attended the live session, so they can join and look at the records. They will be also in that platform. Over to you, Dana. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Stefan, for such a brief introduction, as well as making it more simple for us to follow. And thanks, Anna, for inviting Stefan. I would like to invite Tasha from UNDRR to quickly introduce the session for next week. And Tasha, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dana. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Daria Mokhnachova. I'm Program Officer at the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and the Office for Northeast Asia and the Global Education and Training Institute, which is based in Incheon in South Korea. So the next session of this online workshop will be next Tuesday, 12 July at the same time. So as usual, you will receive an email with the link an hour or so before the session starts. So session 3 will be led by UNDRR Global Education and Training Institute. And during the session, we will deep dive into urban resilience concepts. So we will introduce some very useful toolkits supporting cities to promote disaster and climate change actions among various city development sectors and stakeholders. And we will also introduce you in particular to two of our main key tools. So the 10 essentials for making cities resilient and the disaster resilience scorecard for cities. And we will also provide an opportunity to practice using the scorecard to analyze current progress of cities on disaster risk reduction and resilience. And we will also be sharing a number of case studies and examples of how different cities have been using this tool to support the development of their disaster and climate change resilience strategies. So if you wish to explore the resilience scorecard for cities before next session, you can access it using the link that I will post in the chat. And so overall, session 3 will be yet another very interesting and very interactive session, which will end with a short and fun quiz. So we very much look forward to seeing you all there. And in the meantime, I wish you all a very nice week and weekend as well. So see you all next week. And I've just posted the link to the scorecard. Thank you, Dana, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tasha, for introducing the session next week. I know it's going to be more another interesting session. And to all participants who have joined us last week and this time, we really appreciate your time and your focus as well as your engagement. We know we really want to do our best to better engage with you, especially how we could build resilience in local or in our communities. And whilst we appreciate you for the sessions you've attended, we look forward to having you next week too for the last 2 sessions. I know people are asking also about the certificates. Just as we shared in our concept notes, participants who attend this event will be giving certificates at the end of the event. So that's why if you have not entered in your name, during the event, just put in your full name so that we try to take the record to double check on something. And whilst we do that, we will look forward to having you next week again. We'll be sending you alerts again, and you can still use, we'll send you the alerts ahead of next week, and we look forward to having you. Thank you so much for your engagement and interactive responses you provided, and we really appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and have a good night wherever you find yourself, and have a good morning wherever you are starting with us from. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. See you next week.
Thank you.